You have all been invited to compete in the Blackthorn Brothers Game Dev competition for a cash prize of $3,000. The goal is simple, to create an awesome video game based on a theme, and the theme for this competition is Day in the Life.
Hey dudes, my name's Blekoh. I make games sometimes, and my current project is Sacred Forest.
I'm Dev, a game dev, but just to clarify, my real name is actually Dev.
Hey, I'm Haez. I use Unreal Engine.
My name is Jeremy. I have a YouTube channel called Jerbob where I make games.
Hello there, I'm MrKnowBody. I make games in Unreal Engine 5, or at least I try to.
Hi, my name's Iro. My YouTube channel is called The Darkroom, where I post occasional game development content.
I felt that the theme A Day in the Life of was a bit underwhelming because it was so open-ended.
I think the theme is really cool and allows for a lot of options, but I almost don't like that because I like when I can kind of take a theme that seems really restrictive and think outside the box.
A lot of different games can be made from this, but I'm pretty confident about my ability to make something that's fun, chaotic, and day in a life at the same time.
I already have an idea, and since I can make it fit the theme, I'm gonna go with that.
I am not confident in the slightest. The challenger that I am most concerned about is me, because I just love corrupting projects and just breaking them completely.
I would say the dev that I'm most concerned about is probably Haez. I've seen his stuff before, and I really like them.
I'm terrified of Haez. He's carried pretty much every single one of my projects, and he's damn good.
Probably Jerbob, because he's got an intimidating profile picture.
All of my competitors, quite frankly, scare me because they all seem to know what they're doing.
I truly hope that I do not lose to high schoolers.
Anyway, I'm just here to have fun and make something cool, so to everybody else, good luck!
And remember that at the end of each week, 2 of you will get brutally eliminated by a panel of judges. So go wild, have fun, and let's get started with week number 1, the quarterfinals.
Hey dudes, I thought about the theme and I decided my game would be themed around a day in the life of a spirit sower, which is essentially a farmer of spirits. The name of my game is Phantom Grove. The idea is that each day you venture beyond your keep to battle spirits, but instead of battling them yourself, you control friendly spirits to fight against evil spirits that have lost their way. When you defeat evil spirits, they revert into spirit seeds and you plant them to grow spirit plants. Once they are grown, you can harvest them into their spirit form, allowing you to control them. On day 1, I did a ton of art and animations for the main character. On day 2, I created a few spirits and got my character working in the game and a couple of decorations. Day 3, I added controller support and got my character running around and using the staff. Day 4, I implemented spirits, their movement, attacks, health bar, and navigation system. Day 5, I made spirit seeds, added dialogue, made a day-night system, and added 2 NPCs. The final day, I spiced up the world with this temple, built out a terrain along with textures, and created a full intro with control instructions. So here's what I have for this week. There's a small little intro scene, and you gain control of your first spirit. You can call the spirit, and it'll follow your staff beacon. With your spirit, you can leave the starting area and fight a few flame spirits, which drop spirit seeds when you defeat them. There's also a day-night cycle, since the idea is that you need to be back by midnight or else. There are a ton of things I want to add to the game. First of all, I need to implement growing spirit plants and harvesting, but I also want to do things like leveling up spirits, evolution, spicing up the battles, better spirit controls, and a ton of other stuff. Anyway, that's all the time I have.
Now, before moving on to the next developer in the quarterfinals, we wanted to thank Real XP Lab for sponsoring this video. This is a remote externship program where you work on real games from real studios, mentored by industry veterans. This is for students and aspiring game devs who want practical skills and industry experience that will massively boost their portfolio. You also get some great community and industry connections, and expert mentors with decades of experience credited on dozens of games. Students will work with studios Little Buffalo on prototyping combat mechanics for their upcoming action game. They'll also develop alongside Serenity Forge, prototyping core gameplay, camera, horror mechanics, and environment effects for their upcoming horror-themed mountain biking game. The summer 2025 cohort application is now open. There's only 20 spots available though, and there is a 10% discount with referral code BTP25. The link is in the description, and without further ado, let's get right back into the competition.
I've been grinding at this game for a week. I need a shower. I feel a lot better. So in the game that I decided to make, you play as an intern in the engineering level of an intergalactic star cruiser. It's your first day, and because of budget cuts, you're the only one working. There's a captain who isn't happy with the situation and gives you orders as well as teaches you the basics.
Well, would you look at this wrench monkey go?
I'm taking a lot of inspiration from Overcooked as well as the mini games of Among Us. On the first day I couldn't do much, I was basically just taking care of my son. I spent a lot of time, way over a day, just making the tutorial. I'm also sort of trying to sell the humor and the setting of the game, so hopefully if I have like a strong foundation, then I can build upon that, and the judges will see it and appreciate it. On Saturday I lost half a day. I referee pro wrestling as a hobby, and we have a show next Saturday, so I had to practice. I got around 4.5 days of work into this game. I'm pretty happy how it turned out. If I make it to next week, I want to add maybe environmental hazards and another minigame.
When I heard the theme Day in a Life, my head went straight to taxi driving. However, I wanted to make it a bit more unique and comical, so I decided to make the player a getaway Uber for criminals. Goons on the go. I started off by making a simple drifting mechanic, but that didn't seem enough. So I gave the car legs, and now you can not only drift but also climb buildings with a lot of confusing vector math that I still don't understand. The main functionality of this is to take shortcuts by jumping from the top of buildings and juke out cop cars. You can also walk between roads if you want to. I tried my best to make the cop cars drive similar to the getaway car, as I really wanted the drifting mechanic to be a central part of the game. The cops can arrest you if you stay close enough for too long. But no worries, because you can always drift and juke out the cop cars, which really makes the game look more cinematic. To make it look more like an Uber for criminals, I added a phone with a map on it that shows you where your next pickup or drop-off is. Converting the player's role position to the minimap position was no easy task, so that ate out a lot of time. Finding time for the game's development was definitely the most difficult task, as I'm currently a college student. However, if I make it past the first round, I want to try adding traffic as well as different pickup points that make the legs a bit more of a necessity in the game. But that right there was what I was able to do in a week's time.
Hey, I'm Haez. When I got the theme Day in the Life of, it was actually a lot more difficult for me to figure out something, but eventually I started working on my game, Life of Mouse. This is about a day in the life of a father who's also a mouse and needs to provide for his family. You'll be tasked with a checklist every day to bring home food, use objects you find to progress, and avoiding the house cat. For the first 3 days, I rigged, animated, and implemented this mouse into Engine, as well as got the environment figured out, which I may have spent too much time on, but it was just a lot of fun. Next, the following days, I spent a lot of time on mechanics and other polished things, so I'll rapid fire that. Shadow areas to hide from the cat, yellow cups plus cup flipping so you can stand on them, checklist and item systems, basic cat AI, general day progressing when you complete your checklist, dialogue systems to speak with your wife, Gouda, notifications for various things like checklists not completed, picked up an item, tutorials to help the player understand how the game works, this physics door, a main menu, a pause menu, and sound effects for various things like the UI, the character, items, etc. I really like to add more to this project in the following weeks, like a vertical zipline/elevator made from spool and string, an interior wall navigation, chewing through walls to access other areas, and more advanced features for the cat and some other cool stuff.
The theme is Day in a Life, which I feel like just sort of implies simulator games. I'm not going to go out of the box or anything, I'm going to stay in the box and I'm going to make a simulator game. Here's the idea. You own a delivery depot and you have to run all of the operations. Like you have to scan the barcode of the parcel, where you'll see like the item name and the security risks and stuff. You'll have to do security checks and obviously load the vans and make sure they go to the right places. And if that doesn't sound like fun to you, I'm also adding multiplayer. Let's get developing. The first thing I wanted to do was actually create the joining and hosting of sessions. So you can join sessions with a code, kind of like Among Us. It will put you into a sort of lobby area where you can start the game when everyone's joined. The next thing I did was build some sort of a placeholder depot, just to get the feel of the game a little bit more. I then created the parcel spawning system and the interact system for the parcels, where you can scan the parcel and it shows up all this information, or you can pick it up and drop it. I then added a loading time to the scanner. So later on you could upgrade your scanner to decrease the loading time. I then started to create the van system, so you can load packages into the van and lock your friends in there. You can also choose the delivery route that the van can take, and you can choose the vehicle as well. However, the truck has no mesh, so it is invisible. And then finally, you can send your van out for delivery. Sadly, I had no time left to finish the game loop, and that's because multiplayer takes a long time to code. So it was kind of a bad decision to make a multiplayer game, but I'm too far in now. If I make it through to the next round, I hope to expand this game even further, adding pay checks, security checks, and an upgrade system. That's everything from me. Thank you and goodbye.
Well, this week has been absolute chaos trying to fit this game development competition in with college and all of the other stuff that's been going on in my personal life, but I'm somewhat happy with what I was able to pull off. When I heard the theme, I was a little bit worried because it's really broad, but the more I kept thinking about the theme of day in the life of, it made me think of day and night cycles in video games, and I thought I could do something cool with the sun and shadows. I thought about how a sundial casts a shadow and that shadow moves as the day goes on, and my initial thought was to do a game where you have to like manipulate the sun's position in the sky, but I eventually decided it would be a little bit more interesting if you instead controlled the character and you had to follow where the shadows land. My first thought was day in the life of a gamer where you can't touch the sun, but then I remembered that vampires also can't touch the sun, so I decided to go with that because it makes just a little bit more sense. For the first like 3 days of the challenge, I was just trying to figure out this shadow mechanic, and I kept running into bugs and it was a huge pain. So I only really had a few days to actually add content and make levels, so it was super tough getting everything done in just a week for this challenge. Like I said, it was absolute chaos trying to finish this game, and I didn't get half the mechanics in that I wanted to, but I'm pretty happy with what I do have. It's a top-down puzzle game with a goofy art style where you have to avoid the sun by hiding in the shadows. As the day progresses, the sun moves, and so do the shadows, which leads to some interesting puzzles when you can move around objects like this crate. I managed to also create an enemy, which is a ghost. I wanted to do more enemies, but I just didn't have time. And the goal is to collect all of the blood droplets before the day ends. And then one of the core mechanics I came up with is you get this magical clock. With that clock, you can alter the time of day, which adds a layer of complexity on top of everything else. It definitely didn't turn out exactly how I was expecting, and I wanted to even add another axis where you could move the position of the sun in the sky as well as the time, but I thought it would be better to just get a small minimum viable product of the game done and make it less buggy than to try and chase too many mechanics for this week. If I do somehow make it to the next week, I plan to add more enemies, more levels, and I'll try to add another mechanic where you can move the position of the sun in the sky to add another level of difficulty. It's been crazy, but I'm glad I got the chance to participate in this and just make a fun game. I tried to just think outside the box as much as I could, and I'm pretty happy with how the mechanic turned out.
Okay, it is now time to decide which two developers to eliminate from the competition. But first, introducing our judges. Chomp, creator of Imago and winner of the 4th Blackthornprod competition. Kyle Banks is the mastermind behind Farewell North. TheShelfman, developer of Dance Assembly and Le Chateau. And finally, yours truly, the Blackthorn brothers. Blekoh.
The loop wasn't interesting enough for me to want to see more.
The combat was very, very bare bone. Like, put my character next to the other character, and they're just colliding with each other, and yeah, it wasn't very interesting. Cool little bit of storytelling, interesting art style with the 2D, 3D thing, but
it was pretty bare bones, but I do see like potential for it becoming sort of like a Pikmin style game.
Darkroom's project, it did feel very clunky to me, and I wasn't like, okay, the storytelling and that was cool, but it was a bit long.
I can see that's a lot of potential for like a party game, like a Among Us type of party game with like mini games and stuff.
Goons on the Go was interesting. I really love the art style. I think it has a lot of potential, but currently I think it was the most frustrating to play.
Oh yeah.
I think that was probably the weakest in terms of the theme. Like, yeah, you can say that they're a taxi driver, but I didn't really get that impression until I watched the devlog. For me, when it like popped up and there was a car, and you could like turn into like a quad walking car, kind of just like a random thing that I didn't know why it was doing that. Life of Mouse. It was almost like pretty much like a solid game already. All the environment stuff, art and stuff.
Delivery Day looked pretty cool because simulator games I think are very fun. It just, in my eyes, lacked that first impression. Wasn't really there.
It just feels like it's full of potential. It's an empty canvas, but it was very daring and maybe a little crazy to also implement multiplayer. It was a risk, it was a gamble, and it might pay off later on.
Vampy's Big Day was interesting. It was pretty simple, but it was interesting, felt pretty unique, kind of adhered to the theme pretty well, and it had like a solid gameplay loop. I think there's some tightening that could be done on the puzzles.
I don't know if I was just like missing something, but I could not figure out how to solve second puzzle.
For me, like the first few puzzles, I was kind of just cheesing them, like just running out into the sun and trying to get back to the shadows as quick as possible. It didn't really feel like there was an actual solution there. And then later on, it felt like more of an actual puzzle where there was a proper way to do things.
Okay, Kyle, how about you announce the first project moving on to the semifinals?
The first game that's going to move on is going to be Goons on the Go from DEVS. We did have some feedback. The adherence to the theme is maybe a little bit weaker on this one than on some of the other titles, so that'd be something to look to.
So congrats to our first semi-finalist. Let's announce the second semi-finalist.
Yeah, alright. The game that I'm going to be telling that can go to the next round is I'm Giving Her All She's Got by Solitaire. I was very surprised actually by it.
Chomp, who's joining two semi-finalists?
The third person moving to round 2 is Jerbob.
Okay, that leaves 3 games. Sadly, only one more spot. Blekoh, MrKnowBody, and Haez. And the 4th and final semi-finalist is Haez.
Let's go.
Congrats, man. Congrats.
I'm not sure if I was really expecting to move on to the next round, but I do have a lot of ideas that I'm excited to implement into the game.
Moving to the semifinals is great. That was the only goal that I set for myself. So everything that happens from now is just a plus. I don't think I'm gonna win. I think there are stronger games. But again, if I get to the finals, would be great.
Holy crap, I got into the next round.
Life of Mouse is really polished, and the level design was really solid, even though he made it in just a week.
Everyone is talking about Haez's game, which is super true. His game looks awesome. But honestly, my favorite was Goons on the Go. I love the art style, and I had a blast playing it. I think that's one of the most promising games, and I'm excited to see where he takes that.
I had a really busy week with family and school, which is why I'm recording in my university's meeting room. This week I only got about 3 days in of development. Day 1 was handling the twist, which was either spider legs, police cars, or maybe a minimap. A minimap was also suggested by a judge, so I added that. It's really simple, it always just points to the closest broken object. I think part of the game is that you have to run around finding out what's broken, so I added settings to disable it. Speaking of settings, also added audio settings. Day 2 was working on the new minigame, which is a circuit board minigame, where you need to cut out broken components and replace them. Day 3 was just replacing programmer art and making the minigame look like something. The last half a day I could do was just adding it to the tutorial.
Oh yeah, so that happens every now and then.
And adding it to the first level. And also making the first level a bit more difficult, as I noticed it's almost impossible to lose. Also, coffee now actually has a usage. It makes you walk faster. I added a new tool type that is required to fix the circuit boards. Also managed to do some UI updates for the minigames. I had to finish development by Friday evening, which is now because I have a wrestling event which will take up all of my Saturday. Sadly, that's everything I got done. Let's see if it was enough. And if I make it to the finals, I'm going to restructure the game into smaller levels instead of just like bleh.
Alright, let's do this. This week has been one of the most chaotic weeks of my life. I had one of the most confusing computer science projects due this week, while also doing coding challenges for 2 club applications, and of course, making this game. First of all, I enabled camera pan for the player, so the game is a little easier to control. I also implemented the ability for the legs to be controlled by the player now, which could make for some really cool mechanics. One of these mechanics was picking up the criminal. I realized the previous waiting around for a bar to fill up was a little too boring, so I made it more interactive. Also, the criminal ragdoll spawns in a random position in the world with a slight skew towards the top of buildings to create some variation. I then made a gas system that you can again use your legs for. You can use the money you made out of your drop-offs to fund this. I also thought of adding a stun the player can use on the cop cars, which works pretty well in chaotic situations. I also added a boost because otherwise it would not be a driving game. But all these abilities could not last forever because that would make the game too boring. So I made a shop system for the player to upgrade their car specs or buy more abilities. At this point, I started to think more about the game loop and incorporating the theme more. So I decided to merge these thoughts with this week's twist. I had to add a feature or 2 from Haez's game, Life of Mouse. So I decided to add a day and night system and the necessity for the player to return home before night. The game lasts 7 days with 6 minutes on each day, creating a pretty long game loop. I also added a checklist from Haez's game, which if you can complete before the end of the day, you can make some extra cash on the side. I also made some smaller changes, like making driving more controllable, increasing the quad mode speed, fixing the minimap, increasing the arrest time, making cops stop chasing you when you're climbing, as well as making a timer for the pickup and drop-offs to keep the customers happy. That's my second week, and if I make it to the next one, I want to add more upgrades, enemy types like helicopters, and different maps that the player can play in. Thanks a lot.
After that suspenseful meeting, I accidentally lost 2 days because I don't have a very big brain when it comes to dates and times. But anyways, I watched some feedback provided by Chomp to start the week, which thank you so much, dude. And this is what I did. Refactored how the HUD, items, and an inventory is handled, and tutorials, which I end up scrapping for various unfortunate reasons. Yellow objects now have fail-safes in case of falling off the map, simulation sound effects when hitting surfaces, and individual inputs for flip and reset, no items to collect and use with icons, zip lines, which need spool and string to build, levers plus gates and doors, crawling on fabric, headbutting destructible walls, additions to the environment, some more polished than others, small updates to the dialogue system plus simple dialogue with other characters, music to the main menu and game. Finally, I added in some puzzles, which was my way of including the twist from Jerbob's game. Some are more obvious, and others are kind of general world puzzles, figuring out how to access areas, etc. If I were to get into the next round, I would focus on adding more threats for the player to get past when the cat is not present, some more gameplay elements like puzzles, missions, specifically talking to other characters, and if I have time, possibly an RC car from the kids' room.
So Vampy's Big Day got a pretty big update this week, and the main theme was violence. Obviously, since I only had a week, I decided to add AI, as any sane human would do. First off, we've got the farmer. He goes around and rakes the ground sometimes. This took me 3 days. Not worth it. Then we've got the peasant woman. She just kind of stands there and looks around, but that's pretty cool. And the last one is the guard. Basically, if you get caught by the townsfolk, the guard will come after you. You'd think they would have weapons, but that would make too much sense, so they just throw garlic at you. It's so funny. I love these guys. So I spent the last day just grinding out level design and sound effects, most of which I recorded myself. As part of the challenge this week, we all had to incorporate something from someone else's game, and so I had to incorporate voice acting from Solitar's game. The initial version of the game was super linear, but this update feels a lot more fun because you've got the added element of sneaking around the village, trying not to get noticed while you hunt people down for blood, but then the puzzle mechanics are also still a core part of the game, so it's a really fun blend, and I think it turned out super good. I'm pretty happy with what I was able to fit in, but if I do end up moving on to next week, my main plan is to nail down the sun control mechanic. I feel like there's a lot of potential there, but it's not fully realized yet. Anyways, I'm very tired. Goodbye.
Solitar's game?
It was just not very memorable, in my opinion. Yeah, movement is a little awkward.
It feels a little janky. It's very fun, and I like the mini games, but it doesn't feel right.
Maybe this is just a lack of creativity on my part. I just don't see a lot of potential for like where it could go from here. It kind of feels like it's just already kind of chaotic, and I don't know, it doesn't have a huge identity.
Goons on the Go
made so much progress and feels so much more like it fits the theme and everything it's trying to achieve.
The problem with Goons on the Go that I still have is I really feel like the controls are very clunky still.
Right.
Yeah, I had that same problem.
Yeah.
And also it's very difficult to navigate.
Did like also the new additions he added, like the day and night cycle and the upgrades and all that, but it's true that it still felt pretty clunky, yeah.
To me, it's still, I think I said this last week, it's my favorite game to play, but it's the most frustrating to play at the same time.
Haez's game, the visual feel of it, you just really feel like a mouse, and that's really what this theme is all about, I think.
My biggest problem with it though was the cat made it so incredibly difficult for me to do anything.
Still very good. I definitely think the cat is too aggressive.
I mean, the shadow mechanic and being able to change the time, and he's saying that next week he's going to do the sun changing mechanic. That's really original, I think. It has lots of potential, and the game feels really wholesome.
I do think there are some issues. The guards are too punishing, and I think it has sort of an identity crisis in terms of like, does it want to be a stealth game or does it want to be a puzzle game?
Yeah.
I think right now it's trying to be both, and I don't know if that really works.
I feel like they could still be quite compatible, but he is going to have to think what's the main thing that he wants the players to feel. We're going to have to announce 2 finalists. I'm going to leave Kyle to announce the first developer moving on.
I think everyone was in favor of different games. There's a lot of deliberation. It was not an easy choice, but the first game that's going to move on to the finals is Life of a Mouse by Haez.
Let's go!
Congrats!
The scoring.
All right, the second developer moving on with a chance to win $3,000 is Jerbob. Woo! Congratulations, man.
Alright, starting wave 3. I tackled some more bug fixes and game feel in the first few days. Then I had the week's twist, which was unexpected twists. I knew right away I was going to make the house's vacancy sinister, so I went with the house's owners being murder victims. And to articulate this in-game, I went around adding visual storytelling of the attacker, like broken pots, misplaced furniture, blood decals, footprints, vague dialogue from NPCs, and some other stuff that I can't show on YouTube. Other than the twist, I needed to get a tutorial level, which I did a dreamy cheese environment with multiple stages that take you through each mechanic. Some include multiple mechanics to illustrate that you'll need to combine them together to achieve your goal. And then I got stuck by absolute horrid luck. With an already crappy week, my character's blueprint got corrupted. So this left me wanting to quit the game jam, and which I fully planned on doing until I had a night's sleep and somehow managed to work up fixing the character, which led to some loss of progress, needing to remake systems, and after more player testing, post-corruption, having extra bugs than before. So my days were filled with fixing bugs again. Then I decided to scrap the cat, mostly because the time required to fully polish the AI would be far too long with what I had, and generally it just took away from the exploration. After I got past that, I did some minor environment additions, a couple NPCs with a quest for the player, and general small polish. I'm not very confident in the final product, as with those road bumps, I can see some stuff coming up I have no idea about, but I tried my best. With that said, that was pretty much my week. Thanks for having me. All other devs were awesome. It was nice meeting them.
Hey everyone, I'm actually recording this on Thursday night because I have to go out of town tomorrow, so I only had a few days this week to work on the game, and there was a lot to do, so let's jump into it. The biggest thing the judges helped me to realize is I needed to decide whether I wanted to take my game in the direction of being a stealth game or being a puzzle game. I was trying to do both, and it wasn't really working super well. I honestly think I could have gone either way. The shadow mechanic is really fun, but I ended up deciding to go stealth because I thought it was more fun. Personally, it's just something that I wanted to develop more, so I decided to go that direction. Now this week we had another big twist that we had to incorporate, and the theme was Unexpected Twist. In incorporating that theme, I added lore to Vampy's big day. There's an intro cutscene that plays now which explains how Vampy was cast out of vampire culture for being too small. He finds an unlikely ally, and in an unexpected twist of fate, a sun fairy chooses to help him. One of the biggest things that I worked on was a tutorial that takes you through all of the mechanics and teaches you nice and slowly, because some of the judges said that I kind of threw things at you too quickly. Especially with all the new stuff I added, I think it's really helpful. So the new goal of the game is no longer to gather a certain amount of blood or bats, but rather to just survive to the end of the day. I added a blood meter that keeps going down over time, and you have to keep feasting on blood to refill it, or you'll die. Honestly, I think a lot of what I did this week comes down to this quote that I like, and I don't know how to say this guy's name, so I'm just going to put it on the screen. He said, "In anything at all, perfection is finally attained, not when there is no longer anything to add, but when there's no longer anything to take away." So essentially, I was trying to streamline the game by narrowing it down to as few mechanics as possible to make it more enjoyable. A lot of the judges suggested that the guards were a little too difficult, so I added a radius and I added a new ability called Shadow Walk. Basically, because you're a vampire, while you're in the shadow, you can press space and you turn invisible for a short time. Then I had an idea to do another mechanic with that where you can walk through fences. In general, the pace of the game is a lot more fun. It's less of a puzzle and more figuring out where you want to go, trying to set up stealth attacks, evading guards, and if you manage to kill all of the villagers before the day ends, the guards will hunt you down. It's a bummer that I didn't have more time to work on Vampy's big day this week, but I'm pretty happy with what I was able to accomplish, and I'm pretty glad to be done with Vampy's big day for now. I hope you get the chance to play it, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to participate in this competition.
Life of Mouse, incredible work. Incredible work. You really also do feel like a mouse.
It really went from janky and there's a lot of potential to, okay, this is really massive. With Life of Mouse, I got lost very quickly because suddenly it was so big. Even the very first quest, like, okay, find the, what is it, breadcrumbs and peanut, and I spent like half an hour looking for the peanuts and I could not find it.
Same, man.
So there was so much clearly in the world or in the house that you could do, and I just never got past the first day because I just didn't know what to do or where to go, and I was suddenly overwhelmed with everything.
I'm very impressed with his like level design. It feels like a real house, but it's still fun to like go around and explore all the nooks and crannies and stuff. You actually feel like a mouse like running through the walls, and I wanted to explore everything. I think it was a really good choice to get rid of the cat completely. Yeah, it just helps you focus a lot more on just exploration, which I think is the strength of Life of Mouse.
Vampy's Big Day kind of struck the... It was funny because in his devlog he talked about focusing on stealth instead of puzzle, but I think actually the way he changed it, it kind of became the perfect blend of the two. Like it felt like a proper puzzle now, which I quite liked.
Despite the tutorial being good, the very first level was hard.
For some reason that first day is really difficult, and then after that it gets kind of too easy. I think the scaling is a little bit off there, but overall it feels like complete game.
I do like all the narrative stuff he added to justify the new mechanics, because he got rid of the whole you have to wait for the day to complete thing. You just get full control of the sun, which I like a lot.
The art style, although charming, perhaps more of a horror ambience, could work well with the gameplay, because you really the gameplay really does make you feel like you're playing a vampire, which I like a lot.
Yeah, for the beginning cutscene, I kind of got a little bit of Binding of Isaac.
Yeah,
vibes.
super Meat Boy.
Yeah,
yeah, which is great. I just feel it's maybe a bit too lighthearted, a bit too bright and cartoonish. So the gameplay's making me feel like a vampire. On the other hand, the art, the very stickman little characters, very colorful, clashes a bit. It's time to reveal who won the competition. And the winner is... Nah, just kidding. We're gonna build up the suspense a bit more. Kyle, who are you voting for?
Yeah, so I honestly, I have to say this is a really hard choice. Both of these games really came a long way, and I loved what I saw with both of them. My vote, on a thin, narrow margin, has to go to Life of Mouse.
Okay, congrats. 1-0. Jordy.
I also found it very difficult. They both have become great games, and one of them really jumped out to me when having made a lot of progress. And I really loved the whole vibe of it, and that game is Vampy's Big Day.
Congrats. I'm gonna back that up with my vote. I vote for Vampy's Big Day as well. The gameplay, the openness of how you navigate the levels and how you can solve the different levels. I love it. Chomp, who are you voting for?
So this was a very difficult choice for me as well. Ultimately, I found that the game that I chose feels like a more complete experience, and that is Life of Mouse.
Oh, damn. Guys, you might have noticed that sadly Liam is not here. He's sick. He had a lot of time to play the games, and he came to the decision. So the winner of the 6th Blackthornprod Game Dev competition is Life of Mouse. Congrats, man. Well-deserved win, honestly.
I'm really surprised. I didn't expect to win because I thought Jerbob did such a good job. I felt like his was more complete. I don't know. I guess you did such a great job, dude. I am really shocked right now.
It was a tough call. Very, very close call.
It's been fun. I mean, yeah, I just enjoyed being able to participate, and obviously, like you said, well deserved by Haez. Very polished, very nice game. It's super fun. So
this was another really inspiring game dev competition. Guys, if you don't want to see some of the greatest, craziest game dev videos on YouTube, definitely don't subscribe. Alright, we'll see you soon. Cheers.